Greetings, YouTube. A trope I've seen in science fiction over the centuries, decades, has been that stasis is a good option for incarceration. That if someone has committed a crime and they need to go to prison, say, for 30 years, that if we put them into cryogenic freezing or hibernation, however we want to call it, and that will cover their incarceration. Now, I've seen this in Minority Report, we've seen it in Demolition Man, and recently I saw it in the film Lockdown. It's a science fiction on a space station. It wasn't very good. It really wasn't very good. It was poorly acted, poorly written, had huge holes in it. And they put people in stasis instead of actually incarcerating them. So, why do I think this is a bad idea? Well, a very smart man I once knew once told me, he said, if you put a jackass in a box and they ship the box somewhere, when you open the box, it's the same jackass. Well, there you have it. If you put a person in cryosleep or stasis, and then open the box 30 years later and take them out, they're the exact same person as they were when they went in. Now, the idea behind incarceration is that separating them from society is the punishment. Okay, that's the punishment. You're being sequestered from being active in your society and culture. Okay? But while they're being sequestered, we're supposed to help recondition them. We're supposed to make sure that they get an education and they get therapy. So when they come out of incarceration, they can be a functional member of society. But if you put people into cryosleep or stasis, they didn't get an education. They didn't get any counseling. Now, Demolition Man did touch on the concept you could reprogram people, and that's kind of scary in and of itself. And that's still not really solving the problem 100%, because there's so much more about being a part of society than just behaving normally. Even if a person was never, ever again engaged in criminal activity, what would happen to them culturally? Think about this. Imagine that we put a guy in stasis on September 4th, 1964, the date of my birth, and we decanted them on September 4th, 2015, my 51st birthday. What would they know? Well, how would they have a cultural touchstone to the world around them? They would be utterly lost. Nothing they knew would have any references any longer. First of all, most of their family members would be gone. The ones that were still around would be different people in every definition of the word. The world they knew would be gone. They would be aliens in an alien land. And they wouldn't grok squat. So I'm interested, why is this such a pervasive idea in science fiction? And I know I've read it in numerous stories over the years, where you put people into cryosleep because it's convenient. There's no prison riots, there's no rape, there's no muggings, no murders. Costs are low, you don't have to feed them, give them medical attention, they don't age, they're not having aging related issues. I can understand some of the logical reasons behind it. But it's kind of like having a city pound where you just kill all the dogs, close the pound, and say, okay, I'm done. I've succeeded. No, you haven't. You've changed the problem, but you actually didn't solve the problem. And putting people into cryosleep isn't solving the problem, because they're going to come out of that chamber the same criminal they were when they went in. And now they're going to have absolutely no relationship to the world around them. Think about it. If a person is a criminal because they can't hold down a job, what are their skills going to be like when it's 50 years in the future? They'll be lucky if they can find a job doing something creative like artist. And that's if they had any inclination. Because they're not going to know how to run a computer. They're not going to know how to apply for a job. They're not going to be able to how to... I mean, you imagine hand a iPhone 6 to somebody that just woke up after being in cryosleep for 51 years that went in 1964. What are they going to do with an iPhone? And you tell them this is what they have to do to make sure they get to their parole officer meeting? Or is this how they're going to apply for a job? They're just going to roll right back into criminal activity and then end up in a cryosleep chamber again. I guess in some ways it's a great way to time travel, hopefully to a future where we don't do things this stupid. Sorry, cat scratch, literally. So I've never understood why it was a popular concept, and I actually want to know from the RPG community here on YouTube. Have you ever used it in your campaigns? Now, I personally have used cryosleep, but never for criminals. I didn't realize that until I started thinking about this video I was going to do. I'm like, I've never used it for criminals. I've used it for other things. One of my favorite characters ever, my friend Greg's Niven 7, he was in cryosleep because he had been part of a military unit. He was a super soldier and hadn't been decanted yet for service. But I've just used it for researchers and for and things like that. That they woken up because the person had gone in for some long-term travel, or were in there for research for some other reason, testing the whole concept of cryosleep, that kind of thing. But I didn't realize it until I did the video. I was ramping up for the video that I'd never used it for criminals, and that's a big gap. I should have. Yes, it's a stupid trope, and yes, I think it's dumb, but I could throw time-traveling criminals into a Gamma World campaign or other post-apocalyptic campaign or a cyberpunk campaign or into a more of a Firefly-style campaign. You could do a lot of interesting things. Now, if you're using cryosleep just to travel from point A to point B because it's, trips are long and some of these people happen to be criminal, that's a different issue. But we're discussing here putting people into cryosleep for the purposes of their incarceration. I think it's a bad idea. I'm ashamed of myself that I've never used it in a campaign. And I'd like to know, what have you folks done with this? And do you also think it's silly? Or do you think that's a positive argument for putting someone to cryosleep when they are supposed to be incarcerated?